welcome everyone. I'm excited to be with all of you today. I'm going to be sharing just some foundational information for fostering social emotional development in young children. And today I'm going to kind of be speaking about all children and emphasizing those with autism spectrum disorder. So I'll be highlighting some specific strategies and additional things that we might think about when working with kids with autism. It looked like from the chat that there's a few of you who are foster parents or parents, and then a few of you who may work professionally with kids who have autism or symptoms of. It's important today to think about this information, as I said, for all kids, because it's I'm really going to start at birth and thinking about how that brain develops socially, and the things that we can start to begin to do as they get a little bit older, specifically for ages 2 to 5. So keep that in mind as you go through. Raneem and Zach are going to monitor the chat for me. If you have questions, please put them in, and I'll kind of pause throughout and we can address those as we move along. So don't hesitate. I did want to state that a lot of this information has been adopted from the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. NCPMI is the acronym. So you're going to see some of their resources throughout there. They are a nationwide group that focuses on promoting social emotional development in education systems and with families. And so this information has, I've been working with them for years, and a lot of their resources are free and available. So I'll point you to their website as we get going. So real quick, our objectives for today, I'm going to dive into the definition for social emotional development, and we can kind of get an understanding of what it is and its significance for young children, and look through the lens of those kids with autism spectrum disorder. I'm then going to talk about some evidence-based practices that we use and integrate some practical skills and strategies in those. So you guys will walk away with kind of a framework of what to teach kids and how to do that when it comes to social emotional development, with some additional tips and tricks when it comes to working with our kids on the spectrum. So let's get started with that developing brain and jump into our definition. So this is taken and adopted from the organization 0 to 3. Social emotional development refers to that developing capacity of the child from birth through 5 to really form close and secure adult and peer relationships. And what we mean by that is that developing capacity for kids is constantly changing. So if you think about, if you're currently with young children right now or have been with young children, things move fast. Like their brains are just going a mile a minute. They're learning things really quickly in those first 5 years, and the skills are evolving. So it's important to think of that with social emotional development. It is consistently evolving for our kids. And I would say for social emotional, it continues to evolve well into adulthood. So I'm sure some of us today can say we're still learning some skills around that area. So especially with new experiences and being in relationships with new people. So I like to think of it as a lifelong learning development area. That forming close and secure adult relationships, that is the epitome of social emotional development. It's that attachment piece. It's the relationships that those young children have from the start of birth and throughout those first 5 years. It could be family members, caregivers, it could be daycare providers, teachers, doctors, anybody that they're exchanging relationships with in the community. The next part of the definition is, forming that capacity to experience, regulate, and express emotions in a socially and culturally appropriate way. So when we think about that, it's that wide range of emotions You know, we think about sad, mad, happy, but even beyond that, you know, frustrated, angry, disappointed. So it's all those different emotions that kids experience, and it's that wide range. So really zeroing in on that. And then finally, all of this is in the context of family, community, and culture. So important. You know, our kids have a hub, and that hub contributes to their development, especially socially. And within that hub of whether it's a family or at a school, there's a culture. So how does that culture influence the child? And it's all going to look different. So that's the fun part about child development is, you know, knowing where our kids are from. Next thing, just real quick, I want you guys to just take a minute and think about your own social emotional skills that you have. And then think about the social emotional skills you want to see and help support in the children that might be in your home or that you may be working with. So if you want to write those down or just keep them in mind, keep those in mind as we go throughout the presentation today. Because those are the things we want to go back to and see if we address. And then if you have any questions, if not, you know, we can discuss those along the way. So why focus on social emotional development? This is like a big question that a lot of people will ask. I would say it's the playing field for getting ready for school, for entering those doors at kindergarten, and really for that lifelong success of, you know, being able to engage with other people appropriately and building on those lifelong skills. So we know in the research that kids who have healthy social and emotional skills tend to learn better. They're more likely to stay in school. They'll be better to make and keep lifelong friends. And sometimes when children have those delays, much like children with autism, we may see this in the form of a challenging behavior. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So our aim is to really prevent those challenging behaviors by building up those social emotional skills. So those first 3 years of life are really critical for those brain connections. Those early relationships that children experience are really wiring the brain to trust others, to love, to feel safe and secure. And those experiences allow those new brain connections to form, and then those are then modified through those interactions as the children get older. That developing brain really needs that consistency and secure environment, you know, to be able to have those experiences. We're going to watch a quick video that kind of gives us a little background to that brain power. I'm going to get this started.
A baby is born with 100 billion neurons. But those quadrillion connections, they're not there yet. Those connections form at a very rapid speed during the first 5 years of life, at 700 to 1,000 new synapses per second. Those connections are created through every interaction a child has and are important because they form the architecture of the brain. So every time you talk to and engage with a child, you are literally growing a brain, connecting the different parts of the brain, which allows for new ideas, insights, and creative thinking. So each moment of eye contact, each new word exchanged, each time you make a child laugh, you are strengthening these connections. And since there are so many different ways to do this, we ask people around the world, send us videos of your favorite ways to engage with the children in your life. During these early years, a child's brain makes as many connections as possible. And then it begins pruning the ones that aren't used and strengthening the ones that are. A dynamic process that continues throughout life. But since a child's brain is activated by everything it encounters, It can also be overwhelmed, which causes stress. When the brain experiences stress, the body's alarm system is activated. If the stress is relieved quickly, the system easily returns to normal. And while learning to deal with stress is an important part of development, severe situations such as ongoing abuse or neglect, where there is no caring adult to relieve the stress, leaves the body's alarm system activated, which can have serious lifelong consequences for the child. This is known as toxic stress. Toxic stress can lead to a body system set permanently on high alert. It causes the synapses we use for learning and self-control to be pruned, while connections for fear and rash behavior get stronger. While the brain can change throughout the rest of life, these early years are fundamental in building a strong foundation for curiosity, creativity, and adaptability.
Okay, so as caregivers and people that are in our young children's lives, we're really the ones responsible for kind of building those nurturing relationships, and these can play a really powerful role. And as I've said, those first 5 years, the experiences that a child has are really monumental to the growth they then have as they grow up later.
A baby is born with 100.
Okay. So earlier, you thought about some skills, and I'd be curious if anyone listed any of these on the slide, about social emotion and how they're related to school success. So there's several national reports that are out there that have discussed the importance of social emotional development and learning, and that school readiness and just lifelong success. And these publications have identified a number of skills. These are just a few that can help children be successful as they transition into kindergarten. And some of these we'll continue to talk about, and I've already mentioned, but things like confidence, concentration, being able to persist on challenging tasks, effectively communicating emotions to others, and then also the ability to listen and being attentive, and then solving social problems are just a few. So what happens when a child has autism spectrum disorder? I'm going to just briefly cover the characteristics just so we have a general understanding across the board today. Kids with autism may have challenges in communication and social interaction. They may find it difficult to engage in conversation, or they may have trouble understanding those social cues. And this can make relationships hard, a little bit more challenging. Additionally, we may see some kids who have what we call repetitive behaviors or an adherence to routines. So changes in those daily routines can be challenging and could lead to distress or anxiety. And then repetitive behaviors, it may be repeating things or moving the body in a repetitive way. In addition, we have found that, some kids with autism, and like I said, this is a spectrum. So not every kid, but some may have really focused special interests. And these kids are so much fun because they know everything about certain topics. And they can absorb information about that topic very easily and be able to share that with others. They may have sensory sensitivities, anywhere from light, sounds, certain environments, they may have some challenges with. And then finally, self-regulation can be challenging. So this goes to how they manage their own emotions and any behaviors that they may have. So understanding these characteristics really helps us then in supporting them, because the more we know about our kids with autism and the traits and the things that they have going on, we can then address those in the development of their skills. And as I go through these, these characteristics are really the building blocks of social and emotional development. So we're doing a lot of skill development with our kids with autism in this area of building their social and emotional skills. So how do we get there? We have this critical developmental period, birth to 5 years. That seems like a long time. As a parent to young children, it goes by extremely fast. Before they enter school, it's amazing how quickly that time can go. But this period is so important for all children, and especially kids with autism who may need that additional support. So for example, when a young child experiences those positive relationships, learns to express emotions, they're better able to form friendships later on. For kids with autism, we may add in evidence-based interventions like social stories, or we may use strategies like role playing and making sure that we have consistent routines to help them really understand and navigate those social interactions. Similarly, when an infant feels secure in their surroundings and experiences that excitement of discovery, seeing something for the first time, they really become confident in their learning. Especially, think about the toys they're exposed to and the things that they're learning how to do. So with children with autism, we really, again, want to create that predictable, sensory-friendly environment that suits them to their interests, and using those interests as a springboard for learning that can foster that sense of security for them. That will help them feel comfortable in learning new concepts and then encouraging that persistence when challenges occur. So I love this quote, and I think the takeaway from this is if we're not intentionally teaching social skills and emotional competencies, we will be responding to challenging behavior instead of giving our kids the tools they need to behave differently. So we often can jump to supporting children at that most intense level of need without really focusing on the social and emotional skills that are really at that foundational level that we need to teach. So our responses to challenging behavior will be most effective when we really focus on the prevention of the challenging behavior and the promotion of social and emotional competencies. So this is important for all kids across the board, and including those with autism. So I'm going to introduce you today to a model framework to think about learning new skills. So we as the adults, the caregivers, the adults in the kids' lives, there are some things that we can do and some steps we can take in promoting these skills. And hopefully this model framework will give you guys like a simple way to do this and kind of a visual step-by-step model. So let me show you what this looks like. And then I'll pause for a second before we move on to the next part to see if there's any questions. But there's 3 main components to this. First, we always want to think about when we're, introducing a new skill or promoting it with our young child is when to do it. And so with our young children, a lot of it's during their daily routines, mealtime, bath time, playtime. Perhaps it's riding in the car, going on walks, going to the grocery store, thinking about where that child is and what their daily routines may look like. That might be the when. But it's the how that we really want to think about as well. So that's where this model comes in. And it starts with that show and tell. And this is that early acquisition stage when children need a skill explained and demonstrated to them. So they need to be shown how to do that. And then they're going to practice. They're going to practice a lot. And for every kid, this may look different. For some kids, they might pick it up really, really quick. For other kids, it may take months of lots and lots of practice. It is going to vary. And it's really practicing so that the children have those meaningful opportunities to build that fluency of the skill that they're learning. And then that you got it phase is that maintenance and generalization. This is really important of, is this skill maintaining across different routines? And then is it generalized across different environments? So if a child's at home and then perhaps goes into a community setting, say it's going to the park or even a school setting or going to the grocery store, is that skill maintained in those settings with the adults they're with? I'm going to pause for a second and check in to see if there's any questions that have come in through the chat box.
We don't have any questions currently.
Okay, thanks, Raneem.
Thank you.
So moving on, we're going to focus in on what are some specific social emotional skills that we can promote and teach. The four that I've there's a lot, but four that I'm going to kind of focus in on today are friendship skills. That, again, that's the development of social relationships, emotional literacy, which is that ability to identify, understand, and respond to emotions. Self-regulation is that ability to regulate emotions and behavior in different settings and situations. And then problem solving is identifying a problem in a social situation and then knowing how to move forward with that. So we know kids with autism, they want to engage and interact with others, but sometimes they just don't always have the skills. Or they may be overwhelmed by the process. So I'm going to kind of dig in deep to each of these, and hopefully you guys will walk away today with some ideas and some skills in promoting these specific social emotional skills. So let's get started with teaching friendship skills. Here's just a basic list of what some of those skills are and what we'd be working on, anywhere from, how to initiate an interaction, like saying hi, to giving play suggestions or ideas when with peers. So there is definitely a range here of skills, and every kid's going to develop them at kind of different time points through those first few years and on into their younger years in adulthood. So what we know is that friendship skills can really promote positive, strong peer relationships. Language development, oh my gosh, just think about, the back and forth that people have with one another when they're together. Learning to cooperate, which is huge when it comes to playing, being included in activities, and then just also that level of resilience that kids have when developing friendship skills. So in this first area, I'm going to kind of break this down so you can see how these stages work in teaching friendship skills. As I move to the other domain areas, I'm going to reference this, but just not as much. So hopefully this will give you a foundation to this model. So as I said, friendship skills are really specific behaviors that we can plan to teach in certain routines. This is a kind of if anyone is like me and likes a list, this is kind of a list to do that. Starting with describing it, demonstrating it, thinking about demonstrating it the right way and the wrong way, and then that practice piece. Who are they going to be practicing it with? And with all this is thinking about providing that positive feedback that kids need. Things to think about for kids with autism when teaching friendship skills. You want to think about what modifications they might need. So for example, when the skill is described, do they need some visual supports with that? Do they need clear, simple language? Do they have limited language that they may be using an augmentative and alternative communication device? AAC is kind of the acronym we use for that. So how can that tool be used in a way that supports the teaching of the skill? So think about turn taking, a very basic skill. It's a social skill that young kids, start learning, around 18 months. So you could, with a child with autism, show that picture sequence that lays out the steps of turn taking, and you could do that visually, taking pictures of other kids or even going online and getting little icons that can be used to kind of break that down. So we're going to use that same example of turn taking and thinking about, what kind of praise and encouragement you would provide. What that practice could look like. Like, does the child need some physical hand over hand, to pass that item back and forth between them and the other child they're with or adult? Do they need visual cues? Do they need verbal prompts? So, in this situation, an adult might say, now it's my turn, and gently glide the child's hand to pass a toy. So you can move this, to having a child practice with another child, like rolling a ball back and forth. That's a great way to start building that skill. And of course, having that adult facilitate that interaction. As we know, daily routines are the best time to practice. So in the home environment, there's lots of opportunities, to practice some of these opportunities with kids. So going back to the turn taking and back and forth, thinking about who's in the home. If there are no younger kids like siblings, and there's only adults, that's okay. It's getting creative and taking the time to do that. And it's building those routines within the family unit. Mealtime's a great time to practice turn taking with food items. Bath time, if there's cups, taking turns dumping the cups with the water. It's using the materials that are already there. Real quick, I'm just going to touch on a couple other exchanges and strategies that can be used with kids, whether that they're at home or at school. Young kids, including those with autism, can be paired with other peers, and that's that peer buddy concept. As I was thinking about the home environment when you have a young child, and say it's the firstborn and there's not a sibling, thinking about if there's a neighbor friend that could come join, on the driveway and roll balls back and forth, or going to the park and seeing if there's another child to practice some skills together. Dramatic play is as our kids get a little bit older and really can conceptualize, different scenarios. Like one example is playing out grocery store. So it's a common place that a lot of young kids visit. How can you play grocery store at home? What does that look like? And really breaking down the sequence of steps that kids might have to take. So thinking about, like, they may pick out an item, they might pay for the item, and then they might put the item in the bag. So building that out for kids with autism, perhaps with visual supports, and then practicing that, and then expanding that to include other children, and even, taking it then to that next play of like collaborative play. Like you have multiple kids there. What are everyone's roles? What's everyone doing? In addition, with collaborative play, thinking about how kids can play puzzles together, breaking tasks into steps, and facilitating play routines with like blocks and things like that.
Hey, Sarah,
Yeah,
we have a question in the chat.
great.
Tyson said, what are some effective ways to help children with autism understand and build friendships, especially when it comes to things like picking up on social cues and keeping up with their friends?
Yeah, so I would say, and I've mentioned this a little bit, social stories are a great way to work on kind of that awareness piece. So thinking about social situations that the child might be in, and creating a story, like a visual story, and how a child might respond, and then practicing that. So that would kind of be my go-to strategy for building that awareness. And like I've mentioned, practicing a lot is going to be key to building those awareness skills. I think with that, and I don't touch on this too much today, but there's executive functioning skills that our kids are also learning simultaneously, and they kind of go hand in hand with social and emotional skills as well. But that is kind of those, like you said, picking up on those cues. That's kind of coming from the executive part of our brain. And so kind of zeroing in on that a little bit. And again, it's, putting the child in situations where they can practice those skills, and having an adult there to be like, oh, I saw that you noticed this with your friend today. And so that there's that praise and encouragement as they're doing it. And then the more that they have those opportunities, you know, they'll start to pick up on that stuff. So great question. So finally, you know, for friendship skills, that maintenance and generalization, thinking about how these skills can look across people, across settings. I always emphasize that it's really important to grasp a child's village and all the people that are engaging and interacting with young children. So thinking about the settings they're in and how to practice these skills. And I always emphasize to adults and the caregivers, set yourself up for success. So if you're going to a new place for the first time, look it up online, see if there's photos, go check it out, call, learn as much as you can, thinking about your child in mind so that you guys have a successful opportunity for that child to experience wherever it is you might be going. And they can practice those skills there. So as I mentioned before, NCPMI has some great resources. The QR code will take you to their website there, challengingbehavior.org. These are just a couple things that focus in on friendship skills. They have what's called a backpack connection series, which is really nice, kind of breaking down certain skills. And then for families, they have routine-based guide, which is amazing. So it looks at, like, this is the example of play up on your screen, and it breaks down how to prevent behavior, how to teach new skills, and it's all around social emotional development. So highly encourage you guys to check those out when you have a chance.
And hey, Sarah, this is Zach. We have another follow-up question from Tyson.
Yeah.
They said you made some really nice and excellent points, and they just want to know, what's your view on compatibility in terms of friendship? Tyson thinks it's one of the most important factors.
Oh, compatibility. Tyson, I might need you to emphasize a little bit more. So compatibility in like the people and who they are as individuals. Am I picking up on that correctly? I just want to be sure that I'm understanding that.
We'll go ahead and I'll tell you again when they respond to that, but I think that's what they're getting at, but we'll wait to see.
Okay.
They said like the peers is what they
Like
said.
the peers. Yeah. Yeah. So that's, you know, people are who they are. And I think that's a place, you know, if you have an opportunity, I'm going to give an example, like starting with like a cousin, because that's someone that you might get to know really well and know who that individual is, and also know the parents of that child. Because we can foster the skills, but we can't always control the people that our children are going to be engaging with. And so you know, thinking about our child being successful with those other peers and thinking about it could be different peers who have different qualities and characteristics about themselves. And so I like to think about, you know, can you get to know some of those other peers? Can you get to know the families and build relationships with them? You know, from an older child's perspective, once you're in school, I think that's a great opportunity to advocate for your child, you know, with the teacher in collaboration, and figuring out, you know, hey, are there some peers that can foster these skills that we're working on, and being like a peer buddy with them in those environments. You know, I think for our younger kids under the age of 5, it's a fun age. Like if you think about going to the park, there's so many different kids running around, and you know, seeing how your kid interacts with those children and a variety of kids, I think then sets you up for those next years in school. You know, who is your child gravitating toward? You know, is it the kids that are running around everywhere, or is it the kids that are kind of by themselves or with 1 or 2 other kids and really focused in on something? So I think those first, you know, years of life are really, that's a foundation of learning and seeing your children around other kids. And then thinking about how do I tailor that once they're in, you know, a more structured setting like a school environment, and who are the people I can work with to really foster those relationships. So I hope that helps, Tyson. It's not an exact answer because we can't pick and choose, but we can definitely put some supports in place to foster successful relationships. Okay.
Then Tyson just said thank you, by the way.
Okay, thanks, Zach. So emotional literacy, as I mentioned earlier, it is thinking about how we identify, understand, and respond to emotions in ourselves and then also in others in a healthy way. I will say that this is the one piece that I think emotional recognition is we're learning that lifelong, especially in ourselves and in other. I mean, it just goes both ways. So there is no clear cut, like, your kid's going to have this down by the time they're in second grade or by the time they're 8. That's not the case with these skills. So they are definitely evolving and change as the children get older. So for children with autism, thinking about emotional literacy is really vital for those social interactions, really enhancing their communication skills and giving them the language to communicate what they're feeling. Better self-regulation, reducing anxiety if they have it, increasing that empathy, and then really preparing them for adulthood. So we know that kids who have a strong foundation in emotional literacy will have, they're a little bit more, they can be more focused, a little less lonely, they can tolerate frustration. There's lots of research of what we know kids with strong emotional literacy skills are capable of. So what are we teaching when we're thinking about feelings? These are just some key areas, especially with young children, to think about. And this is that show and tell area. So giving them specific words for emotions, letting them know and communicating to them, that feelings can change. We don't just have one feeling all the time. And you can have more than one about something. You can feel differently than someone else about something, and that all feelings are valid. I think that this is one of the most important things from the adult perspective. It is what you do with them really, really does count. So, we think about the example because we've either experienced ourselves or perhaps we've seen it when we've been in public, but you've got that child that's sad at drop off, or, they're just kind of breaking down because they want something. And we may resort to saying, you need to stop crying, because we're trying to get through what we're doing. Thinking about the result of that. So being that child, it's likely that won't help them and stop crying, and they may become more upset. It's also a missed opportunity to really help them practice a coping skill. So like taking a deep breath or asking for a hug. It also might send the message that being sad is not okay, or it's bad, which can really hinder them in expressing those emotions as they continue to get older. So it's really important to teach that emotional vocabulary. On that NCPMI site and across the internet, you can find feeling wheels. I don't know if anybody has ever seen those before. They come in varying, sizes and amount of words on them. Some are really simple for kids. So starting with your basic words like happy, mad, and sad, and then what can that expand to? And using and practicing those words with kids. I know they have adult feeling wheels. I think you can get them on Amazon, and I've seen it. They're huge. Like, they can get really big, and they have a ton of emotion words on them. So I think, for us as adults, I always reflect on, what do I know? I know that I myself, from my childhood experience to now, becoming a parent in the last 10 years, I've had to do a lot of learning myself around emotions and what my vocabulary is and how to communicate those things. So like I said, it's lifelong learning. A great book that I always recommend to adults is Permission to Feel by Mark Brackett. It's an excellent book for all adults to pick up and to really think about themselves in promoting these emotions and emotional intelligence with kids that they're with. So just a recommendation if you're looking for a good book to read. So let's talk about ways we use emotional words. I think the number one way that a lot of us know is through books. There's so many great books out there, and our libraries, especially here in Kansas, are full of incredible books. We have, I think, throughout the state of Kansas, I've been in many communities, we have really good library systems. So always encourage books. NCPMI has a great social emotional book list that they're always adding to. You can go to their resource library, type in book list, and you'll be able to find it there. Kansas also has the Imagination Library, which is free to all kids in Kansas from birth to 5. You get a free book every month in the mailbox. And there are some great social emotional books that are sent out with that program. So lots of resources around books here in our state. I think another thing we can do with kids, especially as they're getting a little bit older and developing that language, is playing simple games with them around the use of emotions. I also mentioned like social stories for kids with autism. So really breaking it down. You know, you can discuss a situation that the kid might have had. How would you feel if this happened to you? Just those basic questions. I mean, these are great things to talk about like in a car ride or at the dinner table. You can use, you know, what does this look like? So, you know, make a silly face. How does your face look when you feel this way? And so it really gets the kids to kind of expand their emotion by having those conversations with adults and talking through those scenarios. I think additionally, we have to think about, again, the adults that are, we are the models for our kids. And so this is some good information just on kind of those do's and don'ts when it comes to emotions. You know, we could go there. This could be a cumbersome list, but I think it's keeping it simple, you know. But, you know, thinking about examples around adult behavior. So, you know, saying things like, I'm frustrated that I can't find the book that I want to read, so I can stop, take a deep breath, calm down, and look for my book. So it's talking through kind of what's going on in your head and lining up with your actions and putting those emotion words with it. As always with our model, we have to practice a lot. You know, and identifying kids' feelings, modeling those emotions, talking about emotions in different situations, you know, during book reading, labeling emotions throughout pictures. Like these things can be embedded throughout a child's day. You can be planful in the activities that you have around emotional literacy to practice these skills. I think some of it's just in how we're getting through the day with our children. And for our really young kids who may not have a lot of language, you know, think about our 1 to 2 year olds. It's us modeling a lot of that language for them. So it's talking through our own emotions and what we're doing so that they're hearing that. So children, you know, for that maintenance and generalization, these are kind of the things we want to look for. So are they starting to label their own emotions? Are they labeling others? You look sad, Mom. Dad, you don't look very happy right now. Just those little comments. Are they recognizing that emotions can change? So thinking about maybe, you know, an annual tradition like a birthday or Christmas or a holiday, like one year they might feel one way about it, the next year they might feel differently. So, you know, seeing if you're seeing those changes over time. And are they able to talk about how they feel and why and be able to expand on that? So obviously these are skills that you're going to see as the kids are getting, you know, towards that school age and beyond. So these are not skills that we expect in 2, 3, 4-year-olds. So they expand over time, but it's really building that foundation with them when they're in those younger years. Again, there's some great resources on NCPMI for you guys. There's lots of feeling faces and wheels, that backpack connection. And then there's some really good articles on emotions as well, if you guys are interested in more reading. All right, I'm going to kind of go, we've got 2 more domains, and I'm going to kind of go through these a little bit more quickly. So the next one is emotional regulation. And this, like I mentioned earlier, is just being able to regulate your own emotions and behaviors in different settings and activities. Children with disabilities, including those with autism and children who have experienced trauma, they are going to need more support, and we want to think about modifications, more opportunities to practice, visuals, more frequent feedback. So definitely, depending on the child, there might be a little bit more with our kids who have disabilities. The skills that we're going to be teaching and recognizing anger in oneself, learning how to calm down, and then using appropriate ways to express ourselves. So let's jump into some strategies. I don't know if any of you have seen like a thermometer being used on, it's kind of like a scale. Where are you at? And so you can see from this visual here, blue, you're relaxed, red, you're mad, and there's a scale in between. So these types of visuals really help kids in adults modeling like, hey, I see that you're, it looks like you're about to get mad. I think you're at about a 3. What do you think? And then over time, kids can eventually speak for themselves and be like, I'm at a 4 right now. This is where I want to be. And they might have some tools to be able to get themselves back to that relaxed state of mind. I love this strategy. So if you think about our really young kids, birth to 5, teaching them how to take a deep breath. Some fun ways to do that is with a pinwheel. So when you think about blowing a pinwheel, you're really taking in that deep breath and then letting it out. Smelling a flower is another good material to use in teaching how to use a deep breath. And these are easy things that you may already have on hand or can easily get. Some additional ideas for self-regulation, creating like a calm area, whether it's at home or in a school setting. It's a place where if the child is getting overwhelmed, they can go, they have a few materials there like books, and they can sit and calm down. They might have a blanket there that they really like or a pillow that's comfortable to them. I think having those in the home environment and then also in other settings that they're frequenting is really important. Fast, slow, stop-go games, so like red light, green light is a good game to teach some self-regulation. Calm down jars. These are like sensory based, so there's a picture there on your screen. They can be shaken up, kind of go back and forth, have fun things in them to look at. Some other things like mindfulness. So, as your child's getting older, thinking about yoga, deep breathing, starting to introduce these as tools that they can use to help calm themselves down. Again, with self-regulation, you're practicing a lot, that fluency, and then also working on what it looks like across environments. I would say this is probably one skill area that perhaps we're seeing across environments. And so, really getting it down in the home environment to then feel comfortable practicing it in other settings is important. And then your take home, again, there's some great handouts on self-regulation and some calming strategies on that NCPMI website. And finally, we have teaching problem-solving skills. So for problem solving, it's knowing how to problem solve. Children can understand their behavior has consequences. They can start to think about multiple solutions. They may decrease social problems between peers and really increase their independence in play. And increase the need for adults to solve problems for them. And then start to build those collaboration skills of working together with other kids or adults in their lives. So when presented with those interpersonal problem situations, sometimes it's really hard to think of alternative responses. Social stories are great for this. You know, if you know there's a specific situation that's happening, being able to present another solution. When you have children with autism, it's starting simple. So instead of giving them 5 solutions to think about, we may just want to start with 1. And then over time, you might want to build on that across the situation. So, you know, problem solving is that ability for a child to really to know that it's a problem, recognize it, and then be able to think through, okay, how can I solve this? For children with autism, visual supports and really breaking down those steps is going to be really important for this. Demonstrating the process through modeling. So for example, a child might be looking for a lost toy. So you might say, okay, first I'm going to think about where I last saw it, and you can brainstorm with the child. And then I'm going to check all those places one by one. And so it's really providing some structure to thinking through those issues. As I said, social stories are huge for this. I think they're like the go-to strategy for figuring out problem solving, and have that visual and storytelling to help those kids. And thinking about different scenarios that your children may be in, or, you know, or have already been in, and how to help them through that. Of course, embedding into daily routines is very important. Some ways to intentionally plan problems. We as the adults can do that sometimes. So a few ideas. Placing only enough materials out, so if there's more than one child there, it's kind of forcing them to share a little bit. So you know, kind of controlling the environment in a way where you can have the children practice those skills. You could forget to bring a book or material you need to allow to help you problem solve it. Oh, I forgot to bring this. What should we do? And then talking through that with them. Planning projects where kids do have to share and take turns. Snack time is a great time for problem solving. You know, you could pull out food and you have like 1 orange and there's 3 of you. We have 1 orange, but there's only 3 of us at the table. What are some solutions? How can we make this work so everyone gets some of the orange? And then, of course, reading books and stories. There's plenty of opportunities with the characters to talk through some problem solving. You know, when you're problem solving in the moment, be ready to anticipate, plan ahead as much as you can, be nearby to support and encourage, and really support those in the moment situations that are happening. So again, with young kids, I always think about the parks and those play opportunities that kids have in promoting some of those in the moment problem solving situations. And then what does this look like as kids are getting older? You know, they're beginning to recognize when there's a social conflict. They're generating solutions, offering suggestions. They're recognizing others who problem solve. They celebrate, and you know, families report that they're seeing it at home as well. So you're seeing it across those environments. And then, of course, there's some great resources for this. NCPMI even has some visuals of that can support problem solving. There is a nice social story that's up there as well, just basic, you know, what is problem solving and some basic skills around that. I think for all of you today, whether you're a caregiver or working with with the kids from a professional, you guys are in such a pivotal and an important role in fostering some of this. So just making every moment count as best as you can is so important. These are some great suggestions for, you know, whether you're in an educational environment or a home environment with them. Thinking about what you are doing to encourage these social emotional development skills. So, okay, I made it to 2:58. We've got a couple minutes, so, open to any questions right now that anybody has.
Alrighty, so we have one in the chat from Tyson just from a few moments ago. And it's a question about tolerating frustration. He's asking if you can emphasize a little bit more on that. And he says, like the most prevalent or common factor that can sprout frustration on them. So once again, tolerating frustration, can you
Okay.
emphasize that? And then what, like, I guess, what would the most prevalent or common factor be that can sprout that frustration?
Well, I think it depends. I'll start with the second question, Tyson. I think it depends on the child. Learning what does frustrate them. Some kids are frustrated by little minute things and others are not. It could be bigger things like in a play sequence. Like I think about building a block tower. So, is your child frustrated if the block tower accidentally gets knocked down? What does that reaction look like? And so I think it's learning the child to know kind of what their frustration patterns are, and those are going to vary and they're going to depend and it's going to depend on the experiences and the people that they're with. But I think, as adults in our children's lives, we have a good understanding and can predict some situations. Others we can't, but knowing kind of what their frustration tolerance is kind of based on the relationship you have. So I would start there. Zach, can you remind me of the first part of that question, please?
Absolutely. So the first part, it just says tolerating frustration with a question mark. Can you emphasize that a little bit more?
Okay. And Tyson, I'm gonna, when you say tolerating frustration as the adult, is that where you're coming from with that question?
Tyson said no.
Oh, okay.
So I think
Tolerating
on
from the,
behalf of the child's part, probably.
oh, okay. Yeah. So again, it's setting up those situations for success and really practicing, so that the child has multiple opportunities, to feel frustrated and then to learn how to calm down in those situations. So all kids are going to get frustrated in many different scenarios and situations. I think the skills that we're wanting to promote is that self-regulation. So how are they able to calm themselves to keep doing what they're doing or move on to something else? And so that's where it comes in to teach those calming strategies, taking deep breaths. Perhaps it's hugging, a stuffed animal or, us as adults. I think those first few years of a child's life are the time where we're figuring out what works and what doesn't work for them. And especially when we think about kids with autism, we got to think about their sensory world, because touch, light, sound, certain things like that might impact, what works and what doesn't work. So I hope that answers the question.